Andrew Kraft here in the anchor chair. Thank you to my colleague, Lexi Petrovich, for guiding you through the last several hours of the day's top headlines. We have a lot more to tell. I want to go back out, though, to this scene there on the campus of NYU, which looks to get and is getting very, very tense and very confrontational here. You can see there members of the NYPD are confronting these anti-Israel protesters. Viewer discretion is advised. This is live. Let's keep listening. All right, so we do apologize. There is some vulgarity here. You are watching right now some of these protests against the war in Gaza, and some of them are turning violent. You can see right there. All right, we're going to keep with this. Viewer discretion is advised. Nighttime has now fallen there in New York City. We have been over similar protests like this all throughout the weekend, all throughout the day today. On campuses like Columbia University, uptown. NYU is further downtown there. Also at Yale University, the University of Michigan, Harvard University. Many of the Ivy League schools have seen similar protest movements in the wake of October 7th, though as of late, they have taken an anti-Semitic turn, and that's what you have seen throughout the course of the weekend here. You see many of these NYPD officers clashing there with these student demonstrators. Let's keep listening. Viewer discretion is advised. Okay, it does seem like some of these NYPD officers are going to be making arrests there. This is on the campus of New York University. If you're not familiar with the New York area, with Manhattan, it's really right in the heart of Manhattan, there at 14th Street by Washington Square Park. You see some of these zip ties, handcuffs being deployed by the NYPD there. So things have really escalated. We have shown you this scene through the last, hour, 2 hours. The sun now down. It's nighttime there. Arrests being made at NYU. So we're going to keep this up here. We're going to keep the audio at a low volume because there are some of these chants that are vulgar, that are profane. And you see there just how massive the crowd has grown. You also see this NYPD officer furling up a Palestinian flag. So we're going to keep with this. Like I'm saying here, I want to thank you for being with us. This is just a number of similar scenes that we have seen throughout the course of the Israel-Hamas war on college campuses across the country. And we've covered it a lot here on Live Now. This, to me, is the most confrontational that I have seen. And you see here many of these student demonstrators now being zip-tied and handcuffed by the NYPD. You hear the NYPD over the loudspeaker saying students are subject to arrest. So viewer discretion is advised. You see there, things are getting quite tense. A lot of pushing going on, a lot of back and forth as the NYPD has moved in to disperse the crowd in order to make arrests there.
University to leave the area. Please leave the plaza now. You will be arrested for trespassing.
Okay, so now you see there, and you heard the NYPD officers on the loudspeaker saying that they had been warned by the university to leave the area or they would be subject to arrest. Now you see many of them are being arrested here. So you can see right now dozens of these NYU student demonstrators are being zip-tied in the plastic handcuffs like we saw last week on the campus of Columbia University, and they will be taken into custody. Let's keep listening.
No more cops. Just come over here, guys. Don't worry. Just bring the sergeant on the back. Just follow this sergeant right here. Just show him where all the cops go.
And it does look like more NYPD officers are coming in to make arrests. Presumably, you see some of these officers with student demonstrators in handcuffs. They're leading away. There you can see. Viewer discretion is advised. Some of these student demonstrators are being quite resistant, but acquiescing nonetheless to arrest for criminal trespass. All right, so if you're just joining us here, it's a little after 8:30 there in the Big Apple. And you can see so many of these anti-Israel protesters are going to be taken into custody for refusing to comply with NYU's orders to disperse, saying that they are being disruptive to the functioning of the university, the functioning of classes as well on this first night of Passover. So our Fox 5 New York folks, our friends there, are on top of this story. We're going to be relying on some of them to let us know what is going on. Arthur Chien tweeting this, that arrests have begun as demonstrators refuse to clear out the square. We apologize there. Our photographer getting more stabilized, getting more settled. And so you can see the long line of demonstrators who are now in the custody of the NYPD for criminal trespass. And you hear there on the loudspeaker the NYPD officers saying that they will be arrested for trespass. Say that they have been warned by the university to leave the area. And so this is a very similar scene to what we saw on Columbia University's campus uptown just last week. The Columbia University administration had requested the NYPD's assistance in order to disperse these protesters, and that is what we are seeing right now on the campus of yet another major institution, academic institution in New York City, on the campus of NYU there. This is near 14th Street on the west side, near Washington Square Park, if you're familiar with them. If you're familiar with New York geography, you can see many of these Palestinian flags still being waved. You can see many members of the news media, but a lot of NYPD officers who are kind of in their tactical gear, ready to arrest some of these student demonstrators who have not complied with the university's requests to disperse. That is why the police have been called in. All right, let's keep listening. Remember, viewer discretion is advised.
This is the New York City Police Department. You have been warned by New York University to leave the area. Please leave the plaza now, or you will be arrested for trespass. This is the New York City Police Department. You have been warned by New York University to leave the area. Please leave the plaza now, or you will be arrested for trespass. This is the New York City Police Department. You have been warned by New York.
Okay, so it does look like the kind of mass migration there of the crowd is moving a little bit. Maybe that's due to the police activity, maybe not. Okay, you just saw there a chair. A chair was thrown. I'm not sure if you saw that. You saw one of these demonstrators throw a chair at police. You see the chair there kind of teetering to the ground, and you see another chair there. All right, so remember, viewer discretion is advised. You know, a lot of the times throughout the last, 48 hours, you've heard these protests being described, especially by some elected leaders and lawmakers, as peaceful. And I believe what we're seeing, because we can see it, this doesn't seem so peaceful at this point in time. So you see there, if things are getting thrown at law enforcement, this has taken a turn all day on the campus of Columbia University. We did see peaceful protests, that tent encampment on the lawn there, protesting the Israel-Hamas war, Israel's involvement in that war, largely peaceful. Yes, some of the rhetoric and signs were anti-Semitic and threatening to Jewish students. That's undeniable. Nothing like these scenes. You see the NYPD putting some of these chairs in a pile here, taking them away from protesters, so presumably they don't throw them at the NYPD. Let's keep listening. Oh, okay. All right. So you're seeing some of these tents being thrown into the middle of the crowd here. Now, this is all part of why the NYPD is there. They are dismantling this tent encampment. You see, they're also arresting more and more of these student demonstrators. We have vantage points on the ground and in the air here. Let's take it. All right, you can see there both of our vantage points now, one in the air, one on the ground, as these NYPD officers are arresting some of these pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli demonstrators. You see there, we're not going to boost the audio here for fear of profanity, of vulgarity. Remember, viewer discretion is advised. You see the plastic ties there. That's how they take some of these protesters into custody for criminal trespass. So you're seeing both on the ground and up in the air the fact that the NYPD is now in the process of dismantling one of these tent encampments that were erected in solidarity with Gazans there as the Israel-Hamas war continues. And you see there many NYPD officers taking into custody some of these demonstrators who refuse to comply with NYU officials who wanted them to disperse. Let's take it live in the air. Remember, viewer discretion is advised. I know I sound like a broken record there. Only because you see some of these protesters kind of mouthing curse words, kind of issuing profane gestures, flipping the bird at NYPD officers. We've seen that. But these are very tense times on college campuses. Over the course of the last week, we have seen numerous anti-Semitic incidents on college campuses nationwide, but including and especially in New York, so much so, Attorney General Letitia James today issued this statement. She said this on the situation happening at Columbia University. She said this: "The events that have occurred at Columbia University have been deeply concerning and painful for many. The right to protest peacefully is the bedrock of our nation's democracy. However, when peaceful protest devolves into hate and anti-Semitic violence, the line is crossed and will not be tolerated. My office is monitoring the situation closely," she says. Let's take a back to our two scenes here. She goes on to say, "We know the dire consequences of failing to stand tall in the face of hate, and this moment must be a clarion call to respond to those who seek to spark the flames of division." So the NYPD continuing to make these arrests here on the campus of NYU. All right, looks like our chopper is somewhat flying away there, Skyfox overhead. Let's take the ground shot full here. This is going to be a constant theme and story that we will be covering all throughout the night. So, in the meantime, wanted to show you some of these incredible scenes coming out of the campus of NYU. You see, okay, see that right there? Those buses, that is where many of these who were detained and arrested, rather, will be taken by the NYPD. And they will be brought up on charges of criminal trespass. Now, criminal trespass, as you know, it's not the most punitive or stringent punishment. We know that some of these individuals will be released in just a matter of several hours. Much like we saw last week after the Columbia University demonstrations.